Are you tired of not being able to find anything in your workshop? Well, I am too. In this video, we're going to turn this mess into this. Stick around, I'll show you how I did it. The back wall of my workshop has really become kind of a collection point for a lot of small hand tools and screwdrivers and such. And I really have been wanting to clean this counter off. And even though I have a number of drawers on that counter, I don't quite have enough drawer space to keep all of my small hand tools organized. So I thought putting a Kaizen foam frame system on this back wall would be a good use of this space. So I began by cleaning off that counter and taking some measurements, and then moving to my assembly table where I could start to arrange all of these hand tools. Now this is quite a bigger task than I realized it was going to be. But the first thing I had to do was cut this piece of Kaizen foam down to the size that I needed. This foam comes in 2 foot by 4 foot sheets, and the space that I had, I really needed to cut it down to about 22 inches. So I started by cutting 2 inches off of the bottom using a framing square. And then I began the very long task of trying to arrange each of the hand tools that I wanted to include in a fashion that seemed to make sense to me. Now originally I had quite a few more screwdrivers and hand tools that I had considered putting on this board, but as I began laying things out, I realized some of these were duplicates of one another and just tools that I really didn't need to include. And so I first kind of culled some of those out, including some of the various tools that were in small hand cases and whatnot. And then I finally started to work towards an arrangement that I thought was going to both look aesthetically pleasing and also be useful in terms of how I could access these tools. So the interesting thing about this Kaizen system is the long nose pattern tracing markers that FastCap sells. So these are basically Sharpies with a very long skinny snout of a nose, and they're great for tracing out hand tools or different things on this foam. And so it comes in black and in silver, and I use the silver because it seemed to contrast better for me. And once I had everything arranged the way I wanted it, you just go through the process of tracing everything out. Now this takes a little bit of time to make sure that you do it neatly and in a fashion that you get everything traced appropriately so that you can later begin the task of cutting out. And so once you have everything traced, then you can begin cutting out the foam. Now this particular foam that I'm using is the 57 millimeter, so it's just over about 2 1/4 inches thick. And the Kaizen foam comes in layers of 1/8 inch foam, and so you basically just have to cut just inside your trace lines to the depth that you want the tool to lay. And so for tools that have varying depths, you just have to take your time to ensure that you only cut as deep as you need to, depending on where the tool is going to lay. So here I'm just working my way across the board, taking the Kaizen knife and setting it to the appropriate depth, cutting out that portion of the tool, and if it's a screwdriver or a hand tool that has varying depths, I would just make adjustments. Here's kind of a close-up of cutting out one of those particular hand tools. The nice thing about the Kaizen knife is the opposite end of the blade has a little tool that you can use to aid in pulling up the foam. So you can cut down with the knife and then use the opposite end to start to peel away the various layers of the foam. So once I had everything cut in, then I began taking everything out of the foam so that I can begin working on applying the frame. Now the frame system for this wall board is basically a piece of about 2 1/4 inch tall extruded plastic, and it's got a deeper lip for the back, which has a self-adhesive foam layer, and then a narrower lip along the front that actually holds the foam in place. So once I determined exactly where I wanted to position the board, I began cutting these frame pieces down. Now the frame comes in 48-inch sections, and you can just take a utility knife or some tin snips and cut it down to the dimensions that you need. So I began by putting the bottom frame and then one side frame, and then I worked the piece of foam board into those two corners. And then I finished up by cutting the opposite end of the frame, applying that, and then the top piece. Now I did not take the sticky back off of the top section. In case I ever need to remove it, I can just simply pull that off of the foam. So then I was just left with populating all of the tools into the foam.
Well, hey folks, thanks for sticking around to watch this project. If you're not familiar with this product, this is the Kaizen foam offered by FastCap, and also the Kaizen foam frame system. And basically what it is you've got this frame system, which is extruded plastic frame. It's about 2 inches, just over 2 inches tall. It's got the self-adhesive sticky back on the back of the frame, and this comes in 4-foot sticks. And then I went with the 57mm thick foam, and I went with the thicker foam because some of the products that I have in here are a little bit deeper, and I wanted to make sure they were deep enough for even some of these items, as well as the handles on the various tools. And so in my shop, it's primarily a wood shop, but everyone needs a set of hand tools around, and I've got a number of different tools that are in cases, but these were tools that I had that really didn't have a case. And even though I have my bank of drawers and I've been using this similar system in the drawers, I really needed extra space to store some of these tools that maybe I might not use quite as often, but would like to have handy and have a place for them to be stored when they're not in use. And so this was really an excellent solution for that problem. Now, if you've never worked with this foam before, it's actually very easy to work with. You take this Kaizen knife that FastCap also sells for just a couple of bucks, and you basically set the blade to the depth of the tool that you're cutting, or how deep you want it to be recessed in the foam. So you use these long nose pattern markers that everyone is familiar with. These are a really awesome product by FastCap, and you lay out your tools how you want them arranged. You trace around each of the tools, and then take that Kaizen knife and just cut along the trace. And so for some tools that maybe aren't quite as deep, maybe the handles are deeper, what I would do is I would set it to the depth of the handle and trace out and cut that portion, and then shallow it up so that it just got the rest of the tool for the groove. And that way you've got the tools will rest in there and they'll be flush all along, and this bottom piece won't sink into the hole. And so really after a couple of runs you get familiar with it. It's a pretty easy product to use. So I'm really pleased with how this turned out. The only thing that I've got left to do is I probably need to take a couple of screws and run them through the foam and into this back wall. If you noticed in the video, I did not use the self-adhesive on this top rail. Now my cabinets are a little bit lower, and so I had to trim this this panel, it actually comes in 24 inches by 48 inches. I trimmed it down to 22 inches so that I could, if I needed to get this away from the wall with these light fixtures here, I could in the future, and I didn't use the self-adhesive back so that I could pop that out and be able to get the panel out. I'd like to say a big thank you to Paul and the amazing team over at FastCap for providing the material for this project. If you like this video, please push that thumbs up button. And why not go ahead and hit that subscribe button? I've got more great shop projects coming out later this year. Thanks for watching.